Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And this week we have a very strange, I guess, compilation of tales, because yours is very different from mine.
When we first started the show, 5.5 years ago, we used to try and have our topics kind of overlap with the theme. That is so dead now. It's like been dead for a very long time, but no more reflected than tonight. So, yeah, what are you going to be covering this week, Robin?
So, I'm going to be covering two different legends from the Smoky Mountains.
Okay, so I'm going to be covering a pandemic in a virtual world, but I'm also front-loading the topic with true crime in the real world. So, I'm going to be covering the World of Warcraft pandemic. I'm super excited. I had so much fun writing this script, and it has true crime, it has murder, and then it has disease in a virtual setting. But Adam, it's cool. Trust me, you're going to like it.
Yeah, he sent me pictures, and I was like, is that just a bunch of dead It's like a bunch of skeletons all over the world.
Yes.
Of the world of Warcraft. Yeah.
But still, there's other stuff beforehand. But yeah, it's going to be a fun episode. I'm very excited for it. I hope you are too. But before we jump into it, Robin, it's been like 2 weeks since we did a topic episode. Last time folks heard us was during the story time last week.
I feel like things have been the same. I don't think we've done anything. We went to watch a Dodgers game for the first time.
No. We went to watch a Cubs game.
We went to
Dodgers Stadium on Jackie Robinson Day.
Yeah. And that was fun.
If I've learned anything,
I'm sad they lost.
If I've learned anything, is that the Cubs don't win in person when I go. I think the last 4 games I've gone to see them over the last 5 or 6 years, because I haven't gone very frequently. I haven't seen them win unless it was spring training.
Yeah, I've seen them win
unless the game didn't matter, in which case every game I've seen during spring training they won impressively. And the Cubs have won, I can't remember the record. I think they might be 11-6 this year. They're good. And they lost in the bottom of the 9th.
It was painful.
It was painful.
Very painful.
So it was fun though. I had a good time.
Fun.
I got to see Dodger Stadium compared to the other major league ballparks that I've been to. So
I've only been to like 3.
Yep. So. I've been to 5. So 5 or 6. But yeah, not in my top 3. But that's okay. It's got history. It's one of those older ones. I mean, to be honest, Wrigley didn't get nice until it got renovated recently. So.
I got to drink a huge michelada. It was good.
Yep. We basically get there and Robin's just like, I know I'm driving tonight, but I'm going to get fucking hammered. So I was just like, you've got to be kidding me right now.
There are 9 innings.
So this is my favorite part. So since we tell you guys about our lives sometimes, this is my favorite part of going to the Cubs game. She asked, hey, like, I think very, very recently, like very close to the date, she's like, do you want to go to the Cubs game? Like Wednesday or Thursday? Like right around the time the game was, which was Saturday. And I was like, sure. And so I'm like, God, I hope they play the Padres. Like, I don't want to go be around Dodgers fans. Dodgers fans are insufferable. I'm like, who are they playing? She's like, the Dodgers. I was like, fuck, all right, it'll be fine. Everyone we went with that was a Dodgers fan was super cool. And actually, the people we sat around weren't bad at all. I've been around much more obnoxious fans. So that myth is dispelled. But on the way there, she's just like, oh yeah, hey, send so-and-so money. And I was like, oh, cool, so I get to pay for this. Awesome. And then she was like, it's okay, I have cash on me, and I'll pay for everything at the stadium. And we get there and like everything is card only.
Yeah, everything's card only.
And I was like, son of a bitch, it has to be my card.
I've never been to a baseball game where it was only card.
Yep.
It was very strange.
It was definitely a jarring experience where I was just like, cool, this is so much fun paying for everything and not being the one drinking.
Yeah, but I gave you all my cash.
She did. She turned over her cash because I told her like, you better give me money. I didn't actually do that, but she did give me her cash to make up for it. So it was a funny ride there. And then we went to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, which is
it was good.
So fucking good. It's the second time I've been. Both times I've enjoyed it immensely. So, but yeah, that's the main thing we did. Outside of that, your parents came and visited us out here.
Yep.
Which was fun. My dad's coming tomorrow. The day we're recording is technically the 38th minute of 420 Blazed Up Motherfuckers, but yesterday was his birthday, so he's coming out here to celebrate his birthday with us this weekend. So that should be fun. So wish Spooky Dad a happy birthday by, I don't know, putting your hands up and sending out spooky energy to him. So
Spirit bomb
energy his way. But yeah, I think that's just about everything. There's not a whole lot. We've been working a whole lot. So fun times. We saw Renfield with Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult, which was properly advertised as a very silly movie. So it was more enjoyable than if I thought it was supposed to be something serious, and it was funny. We laughed a lot. So I think that's just about everything.
Yeah.
You guys are caught up on our lives?
We're pretty chill.
Yeah.
We don't really do too much.
We really don't. We do stream sometimes on Saturdays for games. So if you want to check us out, we're playing Resident Evil 4 right now. I'm not sure if we're doing it this weekend. We might, though. And then we might next weekend. We always have house guests. I swear to God, we always have people that are coming over visiting us on Saturdays. So it definitely gets complicated. But if we can, we will. So.
Yeah, we have guests next weekend.
Yep. And this weekend. So.
Yep.
All right. Let's go ahead and roll into the topics for this week. I think you are going to be going first, if I am not mistaken. If you guys hear growling or the sounds of a dog protesting because they want to go to bed, that is our corgi who just doesn't want to sleep in this room. If you hear snoring, that's our Shiba who has passed the fuck out. She doesn't even give a shit. So they hang out in the office with us when we do this. But let's go ahead and get started.
All right. So welcome to my portion of the episode where I talk about things that are also not necessarily tangible, but many people say really happened or they really believe it and things like that. Which I'm sure is like World of Warcraft. You know, you can't. It's not tangible, but it happened, right?
It's true.
So yeah, I'm talking about ghosts. Ghosts are a thing. You can't touch them. You can't. I mean, maybe you can touch them. I don't know. Has anyone ever touched a ghost?
You actually touch the ethereal plane.
Is that from Ghostbusters?
Yes, it is.
God.
When you get slimed.
But yeah, somewhat of a leap from Adam's topic. That'll be interesting. I can't wait to listen to yours. But yeah, so ghosts. There are tales of hauntings and disappearances and just overall strange things that happen all over the country. And by the country, I mean the United States, because that's where we're from. And weird things happen in our national parks and in our mountain ranges, and just there's so many stories, and they range from paranormal to true crime. There's, I don't know how real it is, but that map of, the underground cave
I've already
system.
debunked it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Damn, that sucks.
Because it's like missing cases or missing persons cases overlap with a map of the underground cave system, and it like shows that there's no missing cases in Detroit to show you how flawed and fucked up that map is, because there's a ton of missing persons cases in Detroit. Someone just skewed the data. It's like, this is missing persons cases where someone was hiking or some shit like that. And so it's basically like a map of two of the same things. It's like, here's caves and here's people who've gone missing in caves. Correlation? It's like, yup, because you made it so. Sorry.
Interesting. Tell me how you really feel. But I've watched people post videos of these really intense hikes in these national parks, and I always wonder how they make their way back, because sometimes they go off the trail and it's like, fork in the road, I'm just going to take this direction or whatever.
You leave breadcrumbs, right, for you to follow behind so you can go home.
Well, I mean, if you're going to someplace like Aokigahara Forest, you have a string and you tie it to a tree and then walk in there with your string and you just follow your string out, right?
I guess we'll have to find out for ourselves if we go to Japan again.
Never. I'm never going. Not to Japan. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'll never go to Japan again. But
I hate you so much.
It's going on these adventures is something that I just don't think I'd ever do, because I don't want to die. And knowing me, I would slip and fall and become one of those statistics where it's just like, I'm missing and then I died.
I think with your level of clumsiness and just unaware of your surroundingness, I think you would accidentally murder me. I think that's far more likely.
I think I would trip, fall. You would go after me out of reflex and also die.
I think no matter what, I die, for sure. But yeah, this is why we're not going to go hiking anytime soon.
Yeah, so for this week, I wanted to focus a little on the Smoky Mountains specifically. And in Gatlinburg, so the first one here.
Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Gatlinburg, Tennessee. You've been there?
Oh, no. I've driven through it. I got a lot of friends that go down there and spend weekends in cabins and stuff like that.
I know nothing about East Coast or Midwest. Like, I know nothing. So all of this is new to me. I've never been to Tennessee. I've never been any of those, never been to Florida.
Because I've driven from Chicago to Florida, you drive through Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and then Florida, I think, is the path that 65 takes you. But I haven't done it in a minute, so I've wound up accidentally in the Carolinas before because a navigator fell asleep in the middle of the night, and we just wound up going the wrong direction. So thanks for that, Lee, you dickhead.
Okay, anyway, so Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Apparently, it's an access point to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And in Gatlinburg, there's a restaurant that has been said to be a great place to grab lunch, apparently. I don't know. Never been. Didn't look up the reviews. But it's called the Greenbrier Restaurant.
Okay.
And this restaurant was actually originally a cabin/secluded lodge that was built in the late 30s. And which is funny because we're coming up on the 30s almost again.
Oh my God.
And
we're in the roaring 20s right now.
Oh my God.
They started off so well in 2020. Am I right?
Oh God, no. It was eventually converted into a restaurant, but any structure having existed for a long time is bound to have history. It's bound to have stories about it and things that have happened there. And it's coming up on almost 100 years. And in this particular case, there happens to be a haunting tale surrounding it. So legend has it that a friendly ghost takes residence here named Lydia. Lydia is supposedly a young, sprightly ghost that has become such a staple of this restaurant that she has her own honorary dessert. It's like a brownie dessert.
Wow.
It's called Lydia's Chocolate Suicide for two.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, I was just like, it's really morbid.
Did Lydia commit suicide?
Yes.
Okay, that's fucked up.
It's
if they named it that because it has so much chocolate and her name is Lydia, I was gonna be like, oh, that's weird. But the fact that they named it after that, like, that's pretty rude.
I don't think she would find it flattering to have that be the name of your dessert, you know?
Did she drown herself in a tub of chocolate? Because that would be
no,
more appropriate.
But then I would name the dessert Death by Chocolate.
Wow.
The legend goes that a young woman, Lydia, resided at this lodge. And there's no information about her origins. It's a little bit of a mystery. Her whole name isn't known. She was engaged to a man from the town. This is a legend. That's how legends go.
I'm laughing because typically that's something's made up.
Yeah.
But, the longer back it goes, it could have happened.
So she was engaged to a man from town. And she was left at the altar on her wedding day. And now apparently there was a girl who died in a train wreck in 1904 with the same name. But these are two completely different Lydias.
So it sounds like the name Lydia is cursed in this place.
Maybe, I don't know. But the Greenbrier Lydia, this Lydia, she waited for hours at her wedding, hoping that the love of her life would arrive and meet her at the end of that aisle, you know? But he never showed, and it absolutely broke her heart, so much so that she hung herself from the cabin's rafters.
Oh, that's sad.
There are different tales of what really happened, though, because it is a legend and people change things up. I don't know if they, changed it from one to the other, or some people tell parts of the story and not stories as a whole. But stories are bound to change, and it happens. I mean, how many different tales of the same ghost are there? It happens all the time. So the first one, the twist to this story, is he never actually abandoned her. He didn't abandon her. His body was actually found in the forest a few days later, and he had been killed by a cougar.
Wow.
Like that's that's one version where it's definitive, where he didn't abandon her. He was just found dead in the forest, which are kind of like, what are the odds? There's no way that he just randomly ended up dead by a cougar in the forest. I mean, maybe it's possible, but the odds are low.
I mean, if it's possible, then it should also be stated that cougar gets a kill count of 2, because
shut up.
It just makes sense.
But like, what would he have been doing out in the forest to get killed by a cougar?
Maybe he's going to prove his love to her by fighting a cougar with his bare fists.
It just seems, if that's the case, it just seems so tragic, that he was in the forest for some reason and got mauled by a cougar. And it could have turned out so much differently if he hadn't, they'd both probably still have lived and had kids or whatever. But that tragedy is said to be the reason why Lydia hangs around. That's the first story here. The more vicious version of the story is that he really did leave her and abandon her. So he left her, abandoned her, supposedly choosing the company of another over her. And word eventually reached the wedding party at the church, and she left. She left, and some tales actually have her forsaking the church altogether because of it.
Like that's the church's fault.
Some say she was secretly an occultist who followed, Aleister Crowley. We all know who that is, right? And she returned to her room on the second story of the lodge or cabin or whatever, and took her own life in that same fashion. But in taking her life, she left her revenge. Like, she vowed to take revenge. And it just seems like something out of The Grudge, where it's like, I'm going to do this to myself, but I'm going to get you.
I will clog the arteries of everyone and give them diabetes. Because of her dessert.
Oh. Supposedly, she did come back to exact that revenge. And the man in question, the guy who left her at the altar, was found mauled to death by some sort of mountain cat. Now, obviously, similar stories, except this one isn't like, oh, he was killed by a mountain lion, that's it.
And that's why he didn't show up.
This story is that she was the one that came back and did it to him.
It just looked like a mountain lion did it.
Yes.
Got it.
Because why else would he be out in the forest?
Yep, 100% confirmed now. Robin's logic is airtight.
Yeah, airtight, absolutely.
No one ever goes in the forest for anything else. What if he's just picking flowers for her to give her? If
the wedding is happening, someone's watching him. It's gotta be.
That doesn't necessarily always happen. Like nowadays, like people are on like groom fleeing duty, like the best man's supposed to get you down that aisle, but it's not always the case. Like, especially back then, who knows? Maybe they're just like, yeah, I'm sure he'll show up, and if he doesn't, shit happens. They used to ask people at weddings, like, is everyone here cool with this? Speak now if you're not. Like, does anyone want to stir up some fucking drama before these two get married and maybe ruin
Have you ever been to a wedding where that actually happened?
I've never been to a wedding where they actually asked, and I've been to a lot of weddings. Because I would have been like, I do! Just for fun. Just kidding. Sit back down. But I've never actually heard someone ask if someone has objections, but that's a thing that they used to do, so just saying.
Okay, well, I just think that it's odd that he was found in the woods, mauled by some mountain cat or something. But there have been numerous reports of her ghost having been seen in the restaurant, and some of these reports claim that she didn't realize that she was actually dead, that she had passed away. Seemingly like she kind of just lived her life how she would have normally. Just everybody's wearing modern clothes and using cell phones and playing Candy Crush or something. The caretaker that used to live at the lodge claims to have been awoken by the moans of someone saying, mark my grave, over and over. And it was something that began supposedly after her revenge was taken. So after, his body was found and things like that, this started happening. And it would keep happening for what was described as quote-unquote ages, until her final resting place was actually found and marked. I don't know why they wouldn't have marked her resting place in the first place.
Maybe it's because she killed herself.
Right, I was going to say that. But the screams supposedly haven't been heard since.
Definitely a lot of stigma regarding suicide, like especially around that time. So yeah, that's something that connects dots for me too. Like maybe they just didn't conduct proper burial rites on her because they figured like, oh, it's not worth it or whatever,
right? Whatever
reason, and so that she's like, okay, like I'm gonna bug you until you do.
So since then, supposedly she's been resting at peace, sort of, because obviously people want to report sightings of ghosts or things happening. So it's said that Lydia still hangs out at the restaurant, and just on the second story likes to knock things over shelves. And
so she's like a cat.
Yeah, and sometimes she appears for a second.
She's like a cat, because that's her fucking form she took to murder the dude.
Oh.
Afterlife confirmed. We've done it.
Well, yeah, but this could be anything, the knocking over of things. Maybe they're on a fault line. Who knows?
Maybe there's an actual cat.
But it's said that the most common place, or at least the best place to look for her, is that second story. So you check out the staircase and maybe you'll see her. She's mostly found on that second floor landing, which is supposedly the location over which she took her life so long ago. But whether or not she's still around, I'm confused about that, because some say, she's resting in peace now. Some say that they can still see her. And part of it is probably just less legend to tell people like, oh, this place is haunted.
Stir up tourism, stuff like that.
But if you folks have been to that restaurant, let us know if you felt some vibes or maybe you saw her yourself. We're always up for a good ghost story.
Let us know if you had that dessert. Sounds good. I love chocolate. So
yeah, he does love chocolate. He just got a chocolate cake for his dad's birthday.
I did. My dad loves chocolate too. So
I'm not a big chocolate cake person.
I'm a weird dude. My favorite cake is chocolate cake with chocolate icing.
I like white cake.
I'm just like any other cake. I'm like, this should be chocolate. However, my least favorite ice cream is chocolate ice cream.
What?
Just I don't know. Something about that flavor just doesn't do it for me. My favorite ice cream is vanilla. But yeah, that's just it's just weird. I get that. So
interesting.
I'll put that out there.
Anyway, so the next story here is going to be that monster legend I was mentioning earlier. So, who doesn't like a good monster, right? We've covered Mothman, Jersey Devil. I think we've covered, what else? We've covered
all
so
the
many.
Other ones. We've covered Bigfoot. We've covered Yeti.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
We've covered all those ones that are similar to Nessie. So, because there's a bunch of them that supposedly look just like Nessie that reside in like any lake or body of water around the world. So, covered a lot.
In eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina, there are tales of the spear finger. So the spear finger is it sounds really weird, but
I thought you said spirit finger.
No,
first.
that's spirit finger, spear finger.
I was about to be like,
no, spear finger. So it's a Cherokee legend about an entity resembling a woman covered in stone-like skin with a sharp finger on her right hand. And it's been described as resembling a spear or an obsidian knife. And obsidian is dragon glass, if you guys didn't know.
Volcanic glass, for those of you who aren't familiar with dragons.
Game of Thrones. But yeah, hence, the spear finger name. This creature, their mouth is stained red by all the blood from the livers that they eat, because that is their choice food.
The most disgusting and horrifying thing about this creature so far is the fact that they prefer liver.
Have you eaten liver before?
Yeah, it's fucking gross.
You think so?
It's like dog food.
What?
It's like a pate.
Oh, you're thinking mush. Liver worst.
No, I'm thinking liver. I've had chicken livers before, and they are nasty.
Because it depends on how you cook them. They're not like mush.
Any livers that I've had that have been prepared for me are mush. That's how I've eaten liver before.
Okay.
It's like a pate. So if there's another way to prepare liver, I'd be happy to not try that, because I can't imagine it'll taste much better.
Because when I've had liver, it's been like put in soup or something like that, and it's not mush. It's actually hard.
Gross.
I don't know.
Not selling it for me.
But that's how I've had it. So I don't know. I was like, mush? What are you talking about? I love liverwurst. Love it. It's so good. Liverwurst sandwiches. I'm all about that life. So her skin is actually stone. She has like stone skin, like grayscale, pretty much.
Okay. Lots of Game of Thrones comparisons on this one. And she sounds like Lady Stoneheart too, so. Which, you have to read the book to know who that is. In the books, spoiler alert, when Catelyn dies, she comes back, but her throat's been cut so bad that she can't speak. And she's basically like a walking corpse dedicated to revenge. So that's where the last book left off that has been written, is like she captures Jaime Lannister. So, just saying.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Fun stuff. I don't know if she does. Her servant does.
Have you read the newer book?
I've read all the books. The newer book came out when I was still living in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
It's been a long time.
Has it really?
Yeah.
The dragon one?
Yeah, Dance with Dragons came out in like 2010, 2011.
Wow.
I was still back in Indiana. It's 2023, y'all. The show started on HBO, went all the way through, finished. Now we have a spinoff, another spinoff on the way, and Winds of Winter still ain't fucking ready yet. GRRM. What the fuck?
Okay, anyway. Okay, so her skin was made of stone, but it was like real hard, dense armor-like skin. Okay. And her skin would create like these sounds of thunder as she walked. And she could crush rocks just by stepping on them. Her voice would echo down from the mountains and scare any of the creatures of the forest away. And these sounds would be a warning to the villages below, that she was coming or she existed or whatnot. She had power over stone. I mean, it makes sense. She had stone skin. That's her power. She can work with rocks.
Also a racial passive ability for dwarves in World of
Is it
Warcraft.
really?
It's called stone skin, pretty sure.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So she could pick up boulders without any effort. She could stack them, break them. She
started out as a cryptid, but this is starting to sound Paul Bunyan-esque at this point. She sounds kind of fucking cool.
She could even morph them, like change their shape to whatever she wanted.
She wants it a flapjack the size of a house.
What?
Just keep going.
This is part of the legend of the creation of a stone bridge through the sky that went to Whiteside Mountain on Blue Ridge. Don't know where that is. Never been. But these quote-unquote higher beings saw her creating this bridge and thought that her actions were arrogant. Like, you think you can build this bridge to us. It's like, you're too close to us. We don't like it. So they struck it down with lightning.
It's a Tower of Babel thing all over again.
Exactly. So they struck it down with lightning and left stone ruins in its wake. The Cherokee people still like to say, like, that's where it was. Like, you can point it out. So there are a number of stories of the creation of different rocky crags that the Cherokee do credit to Spearfinger, because it's just not Spearfinger. But this, going back to the bad cryptid part of it, legend part of it. Okay, so this long, sharp finger that they had on their right hand is what they would use, obviously, to kill their victims, because that's the haunting, horrible part of this creature. What's really creepy, though, is that it could also shapeshift. So it could shapeshift into any family member or anyone that could trick an intended victim.
Would their finger still be long?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say, there's got to be a reason why it's called that. So if you see a family member and they're acting kind of funny, they're like, no, come into the woods. And their finger is really long, like, not today, Satan.
So they would hide it. They would hide their finger under like a blanket or something.
Anytime someone asks me to do something weird from now, I'm like, show me your fucking hands. Like, show
me your hands.
Put up your fucking hands right now.
After becoming a part of the intended victim's world for a while, like once they kind of ingrain themselves in that life, they can't change while being looked at by anyone. It's kind of like weeping angels from Doctor Who, where if anything is looking at them, their form is frozen.
Okay.
So they have to...
That's probably a good thing, because what if they're trying to change and someone like peeks at them, they're like, why isn't it working? It's like, oh, someone's observing me right now. My secret was almost given away.
Yeah. Safety precaution, right? But their favorite form to take is an elderly woman, because who doesn't trust an elderly woman?
Me,
right?
Any of them, not one.
They would deceive their victims, hiding their stabby little fingers under their robe or, whatever they have to hide it, until the moment that they had to use it. And as an elderly woman, she would approach children and like comb their hair and get them to fall asleep, and then she would attack them. And this whole thing may have been a cautionary tale, because the Cherokee would be very cautious about strangers that approached their camp. And they would stay together at all times and would be suspicious of anyone that kind of wandered off on their own, because anyone that went off on their own could possibly be coming back as a Spearfinger in disguise.
I don't buy this as a cautionary tale, because the thing it transforms into is something that looks like someone you know. If it was coming in as a stranger, like if it could just transform into a human and then show up and be like, oh, I'm just looking to hang out. Do you have a tent I could be in or something like that? Then I'd be like, yeah, cautionary tale for sure. Avoid strangers. This thing shows up as someone you know.
But a good portion of, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a solid percentage of kidnappings and murders. They all happen, or
it's usually the victim is the perpetrator is someone you know. Knows.
Yeah.
And
So
it's been like that for a long time. We know that now. But I'm just saying, like, this seems
maybe
suspicious.
The Cherokee knew back then.
I mean, obviously they knew something was up.
So parents would tell their children not to wander off, because the Spearfinger would appear to them as their grandmother or their favorite aunt. So it could be anyone that you know, which again makes me think that it's somewhat of a cautionary tale, right? Because I wouldn't trust someone if I knew, they had intentions of hurting my kids or something like that, or murdering me. It's just
I wouldn't trust someone if I knew those were their intentions as well.
But like maybe they told their kids like, don't wander off with grandma. Maybe, it's not safe right now or something.
Maybe
right?
it's something where there's like a rift in the family and it's just like, I don't like the fact that they like that person better than me. Hey, just so you know, if you wander off with them, it could be a monster that kills you.
Yeah, maybe. Hunters that were alone in the woods would report seeing an old woman with a strange hand. She would sing a song about eating livers and would frighten them and cause them to run back to their village. There are tales that include them taking over the form of a victim. They would like kill someone, take their form, hide the body, and then go to their house and wait for their family to fall asleep. And after their family fell asleep, then they would get all their livers too. It's like sneaking into I don't know.
Liver factory.
I was thinking more like, when you're a spy and you go into, it's like being behind enemy lines and then killing everyone.
They're infiltrating this place.
They're Trojan horse. That's what it is.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so the attacks would be described as a stab in the back of the neck or through their heart, like the victim's heart. Somehow pulling the livers out. Don't know how they do that through the heart, but that's how these websites have described this action. But the attacks would be really quick. So quick that the victims wouldn't even really feel it happen. And it wouldn't even leave a scar. And so it would be so quick. It's like needle poke, in and out, got your liver, nom nom nom. And then the person would get sick and die.
What? So they survive these attacks, but they would just not have a liver anymore.
How long can you live without a liver, bro?
Not very long at all.
Exactly. So,
why would they be able to survive these attacks if they're being poked in the heart?
Or the back of the neck. All they're doing is stealing livers. I don't know.
You know how big a liver is, right? It's not going to come
Maybe
out
they're doing
through
it
your
piece by
heart
piece.
and then you're going to be okay.
Maybe they're doing it piece by piece, like...
Their fingers a straw.
Like how, what is it, bush babies or whatever those creatures are with the long fingers. They crack open eggs and they suck the eggs out with their little fingers.
I've never seen that video. I know what you're talking about, but I've never seen them crack open eggs before.
Oh, I'll
this
show
has
it to you
become
later.
significantly less believable for me all of a sudden.
The only weak spot on this creature would be in they have a hidden heart. So their heart isn't in their chest. Their heart is in their hand.
Huh.
Kind of like the Ood. How they hold their
Wow.
brains in their hand. This is just a Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, reference heavy episode. But, so with their stone skin, arrows couldn't pierce it. They would just, disintegrate on impact. But she did have an enemy, the Stone Man. The Stone Man, these entities, it reminded...
He just walks around on 420.
It reminded me...
Dog? You want to get high?
It reminded me kind of, like Hancock. You know how in Hancock, there's him, and then there's his wife, and they know each other exists, and they can sense each other.
Spoilers for Hancock. But he doesn't know she exists. He lost his memory, remember?
Oh my... Whatever, babe, but
Did
he
you
can...
lose your memory?
He can sense her. That's the whole... They know each other exists. Maybe Hancock didn't fucking know. The Stone Man knows the Spear Finger Lady exists.
Okay.
Does
she get weak when he's around?
So
Is that the connection to Hancock you're drawing?
They are
Does
enemies.
he look like Will Smith?
They hunt the same things, so they can't be near each other.
Okay.
So they both hunt livers. And because they both hunt the same thing, it's
There's only so many livers to go around.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's stay away from me kind of deal.
Do they fight or do they just not like each other?
But they can sense each other. I think they're enemies in that they can't hunt in the same hunting ground.
Okay, this is weird. That's not so much an enemy as much as it is like a rival. It's like if you were a realtor.
Maybe they're a rival for food resources.
Yeah, if you're like a realtor, your enemy isn't someone who also sells houses and you're trying to sell that house. Your enemy is the guy who's burning the houses to the ground.
Okay, I could see it more as a rival because the Stone Man has more powers than the Spearfinger, and they how she has to kind of work a little harder to create sky bridges out of rocks and stuff. He has a staff that he can just do it much easier.
Bullshit.
with.
Why does he get all the cool stuff? I bet she gets paid more too.
I'm sure the staff has something to do with the phallic object that men have and women don't. I'm sure it's some sexist BS like that.
Well, now I feel bad for her. Give her all the livers.
Yeah. So the legend continues, okay, that the Cherokee called a great council to discuss the creature that kind of haunted their people. And their medicine man explained what the Spearfinger was and how it deceived and what it did and how they were going to attract her and trap her and hopefully kill her. They didn't know if they could kill her, but the medicine man told them that, you might get lucky, which is all we hope in the world to be, is lucky. And so they set a trap. They created a fire that produced a large plume of smoke in the air.
Okay, hang on. Whoa, pause. I've heard this story before. At some point when they were discussing whether or not they could kill it, did the medicine man said, if it bleeds, we can kill it?
No.
Okay.
Is that from Predator?
It sure fucking is.
Okay, so they create this fire that makes smoke. So they have a lot of smoke going in the air. It attracts the Spearfinger to this village. So you can hear her coming because she...
Telltale clicking?
Shut up! Because her skin is made of stone and she makes the sounds of thunder as she goes.
Gotcha.
So she's coming down this mountain. They're preparing for her. And she comes and appears as an old...
Dude, kill me now!
Stop! Is that the movie where he's like, get to the chopper?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Anyway.
I am sorry to keep interrupting you.
She appears as an old woman, which confuses them at first because they aren't expecting that. They're expecting, a big, huge monster that's eating livers. But they see her and they hesitate. She even calls out to them for help. So they think oh, is she someone from a nearby village? What's going on? But the medicine man is like, no. She is what we've been waiting for.
This is totally the Billy character from Predator.
Oh my God.
I'm just saying.
So he throws a spear at her and the villagers all start attacking as well, but everything deflects off her skin. And they can't, she doesn't have, it's not like Dragon Scale. She doesn't have a weak point in her, there's no chink in her armor.
There's no glowing spot that tells you where to attack her like in Zelda.
So she goes after them with her stabby little finger. And eventually, as she's attacking all of them, she falls into their trap. They dig a pit with spikes under there. But they obviously do nothing to her. She's just now in this pit. And
then she fucking pops that thing open on her wrist and pushes in a few buttons and it starts beeping quicker and quicker and they all run away. Right?
At this point, the higher celestial beings, I'm sure they're gods, flew down from the skies as birds to attack her. And one of these birds is a titmouse. And the titmouse tells them to attack her chest, which doesn't work because
that's not where her
heart is. So because it doesn't work, they capture this titmouse and cut off its tongue, believing that it was lying to them.
That's fucked up.
And so they cut off the tongue of this bird. The titmouse flies back up into the sky and never returns. And what's sad is that it didn't lie on purpose. It just didn't know. It wasn't specific enough to tell them, this is where you should be attacking. So another bird, a chickadee, lands on the... Oh, actually, a fun fact about the titmouse thing. So these days, it's believed that when a person has a short tongue, that they are thought to be a liar because they cut the tongue off of the titmouse.
Wow.
So now, if you have a short tongue, it's you're...
But the titmouse didn't lie.
But I know, but it's it's just a belief that's grown from that legend.
If you're a liar, you're a short tongue. Something like that. It's an insult.
I don't know. It's probably it's I don't believe that. I'm sure it's just in this
particular region.
It's you're a descendant of that, and so you have a short tongue. Gotcha. You're not to be trusted or something. I don't believe that, guys. If you have a short tongue, all the more power to you.
Are there people out there with short tongues? I know there's people out there with long tongues, but I've never heard of people with short tongues.
Yeah, I know people with short tongues where their tongue can't go past a certain point, and it's just look.
How short? Can't go past their teeth? Okay, you're just poking your tongue through your lips. Seems like normal tongue to me.
Well, no, my tongue can go
Okay, your tongue is still getting pushed past your... I don't know. Let's just keep going.
I
have more Predator jokes I want to get back to.
Okay. Anyway. I just thought that was interesting that a legend like this actually
added a colloquialism into it.
Yes. So anyway, another bird, a chickadee, landed on the right hand of the woman of the spearfinger, which is more of a sign, getting more into the detailed nuances of how to kill this thing. So the hunters view this as a sign that they should aim for her hand. So they start aiming at the spearfinger's hand. And as they keep hitting her, the spearfinger is starting to get afraid and upset because, it's getting closer to its heart. Eventually, they are able to sever her heart. And when they do that, she falls to the ground and stops moving.
Fluorescent, greenish, yellow fucking blood everywhere.
Yeah, the Final Fantasy victory song starts playing. So because of its help, the chickadee is now considered a truth teller. So whenever people see chickadees perching near a home, it's said that it's a sign that if a man within the home is away, they will come back safely. So that's kind of cool. It's all these things that we consider superstitions stem from something, and it's really cool. The stone man heard the cheers and saw the result of the villagers' actions and considered himself warned. And he didn't show his weak spot, which is the same. They didn't know what his weak spot was. So he's like, that's cool. I'm out.
So he shows them respect, much in the way that in Predator 2, after Danny Glover slays the Predator, they give him that gun. It makes sense.
Anyway, he is, though, eventually ended by the act of 7 women. So, supposedly he couldn't handle the sight of a woman who was on her period. And so what they did was they set up a trap for the stone man to come down and lined up these 7 women in front of him who were somehow synced up in cycles.
He freaked out. He threw down his staff. He took off his mask. He threw down his shoulder cannon. And he's like, I can't do this.
I just realized you're talking about the Predator. Stop!
There's a lot of overlap.
So the women that were lined up in front of him, the stone man, weakened him enough for the medicine man to pin him to the ground and build a fire over him. And despite his efforts to call any, animal friends or whatever to come and help him, he succumbs under that fire, and that is the end of the stone man. And that's why neither of those things apparently exist anymore.
You know why he probably used the fire? To hide his heat signature, because the stone man is probably... There's a lot of Predator jokes. I will stop.
Anyway, that's the tale of the spearfinger.
That's crazy. That's very, very crazy. The fact that there's 2 of them, that they compete for livers. They have so many rules to them. It's just bizarre. And the fact that he gets defeated by having a fire built on top of him. It's not like they burned him or set him aflame. It's like, no, they just like, okay, he's down. Okay, get me some sticks. Okay, I'm going to rub these together. Just stay right there. This is the end of you. So it's a bizarre tale, but either way, I did not know any of this stuff about the Smoky Mountains, and I've been there quite a bit. So
yeah, I didn't know. I've never been.
Very interesting. I'll take you on a drive through there one day. You'll be like, holy shit, these are smoky. I'll be like,
are they smoky?
Yeah, they absolutely are.
Are they really?
Yeah, it's just very misty. They could be called the Misty Mountains.
They should be called the Misty Mountains.
But they aren't. They're the Smoky Mountains. So. All right. I think that's everything for Robin's topic. So before we get to my topic, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And we're back. So this week, I actually had a really hard time nailing down what I wanted to cover. A poltergeist was the first thing I thought of, way back when we did the Storytime episode. But the ones I have on my list are kind of thin. They don't have a lot to them, and some of them seem kind of fake. And I shifted pretty quickly to wanting to cover a curse. When we were at the Cubs game, I thought maybe I'll cover the Curse of the Bambino. I talked about it when I did the Curse of the Billy Goat and how I'd eventually cover the Curse of the Bambino. But I don't know if anyone's really interested in a story about an 86-year baseball curse that took a blood sacrifice to break. It is interesting. I watched all of it.
Blood sacrifice?
Legitimately, blood was involved in breaking that curse. I'll tell you about it when I do cover the Curse of the Bambino. But until then, I also thought about doing a cult because cults are bizarre and interesting and really scary because people are the most horrifying monster. And then I thought, you know what? This episode is going to come out on 420. Why not cover the Curse of 420? But half the stuff people say it happened on 420 actually happened 1 to 5 days before or after 420. I know Columbine happened that day. It was Hitler's birthday on 420, but a lot of other stuff like Oklahoma City bombing did not happen on 420. The Titanic didn't sink on 420. It was around 420, but it wasn't that day. So I was like, I want to cover something as like big as Columbine, like in depth, rather than just like glance over it for like a cursed date topic type of thing. So I was getting very frustrated, and I was like, I guess I could just give up and play WoW. And then it hit me, like, something happened back in the day in World of Warcraft when I was playing, like when it first had come out. And it was so bizarre and such a facsimile to real life that the CDC wound up studying it, along with a lot of other like medical institutions in general. So we're going to be covering the World of Warcraft pandemic, which might sound weird. Like, this particular story happens in a digital world, and I totally understand that this isn't the stuff of ghosts and cryptids like Robin just covered. But the attention it gathered was substantial, and it's for a very specific reason. People hadn't experienced a pandemic in a long time when it happened, and it felt like it was going to be a model of what could happen. If you thought this topic was going to be about the addiction to World of Warcraft and how people used to play until they died, that's a fair assumption, because that shit definitely did happen. So people became so obsessed with World of Warcraft when it came out that they would literally play until their bodies withered up and died from starvation or dehydration or lack of sleep. And that takes days or weeks sometimes.
That's some dedication.
It is. Obviously, people were very, very invested in that fucking game. So let's start there. And I'll tell you about some of the bizarre deaths associated with folks that played World of Warcraft, so you can understand why it was so important to people before I get into what happened. All right? So, when I was a young man, I'm going to start like way back at the beginning, and I was in 8th grade, I was eagerly anticipating the release of a game called Warcraft 3. Warcraft used to be an RTS, which means real-time strategy, where you build like 200 units, you have a composition of an army, and then you send it to fight your opponent's army, and whoever's left standing wins. It's a very different game than what World of Warcraft is. So, that's how Warcraft 2 had been, that's how Warcraft 1 had been. Warcraft 2 is very near and dear to my heart because my dad used to take me to like Best Buy or Circuit City when it existed, and he'd like look at PC games with me, and if he found something he thought looked cool, he'd be like, let's buy this together. I'll buy it, you teach me how to play it. And it was his way of like kind of trying to connect with me, and if the game was cool enough, he would play it, but most of the times he would just watch me play. And Warcraft 2 was like our favorite one to play together. So after Warcraft 2, this game called StarCraft came out, which was very similar, but it's set in space. So that one was super important. And that was the first time I realized like video games could get very popular, because it said that when StarCraft was at its peak, 1 out of every 3 people in Korea were playing StarCraft, which is insane to me. Like 1 out of 3 in a population of a full country, like that's nuts.
I mean, it's much more popular in Korea than it is here in America.
Yeah. And when StarCraft was out, Warcraft 3 got announced. I'm like, oh my God, they're going back to Warcraft. Super excited. Can't wait. The company that makes Warcraft, that's known as Blizzard, for those of you who don't know.
Blizzard Activision.
They will, now it's Blizzard Activision, they will make you wait. Their announcements are met with a release date of when it's ready. They've never given a release date when something is announced, because they're like, we're gonna work on this until it's done, and then we're gonna release it. And that's why their games garnered such a reputation of being like really great games back in the day. So while I was waiting, they all of a sudden announced another Warcraft game. I was like, what the fuck is happening? And it's called World of Warcraft. And this one is a massive multiplayer online role-pling game.
That's an MMORPG.
It's an MMORPG, or often referred to as an MMO. For those of you who don't know anything about video games, you haven't heard about MMOs or Warcraft, essentially you play a single character, you run around, and other people playing their characters are present in the world. So like if you play World of Warcraft, there's like between like 5 and 20,000 people playing in the same world as you. It's something that's kind of hard to pull off, but when they figured out the technology, they're like, we can do this.
Final Fantasy 14 has 50,000.
Yeah, no, it's 500,000.
Is it 500,000?
Their servers are enormous.
500,000 in a server?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, but back in the day, EverQuest was the big MMO, and MMOs weren't that popular.
EverQuest.
And people were like, okay, cool. Like, EverQuest was popular for its genre, but its genre wasn't like fucking Madden or any of that shit. You know, it's not the game that's going to get everyone to go out and buy it like Call of Duty. But Blizzard saw an opportunity. They're like, Warcraft is a very popular IP. Let's just, make our own MMO. So they're developing 2 games at the same time. Warcraft 3 comes out. It's awesome. 2 years go by. Finally, WoW hits. I'm like, okay, cool. In the meantime, I got invited to test World of Warcraft in the summer of 2003, a year before it came out, which I was super excited to do. I was like, I can't believe I got picked. So when I graduated high school, it was perfect timing. I had the summer where I was like, I have nothing to do. I can totally sit at home and play WoW. And to give you an idea of how invested I was in the game when it was in its testing phase, nothing was going to count. They were going to reset it when the game came out. But it was so awesome. There was this one night where my friend Lee was living at my parents' house when I was still there. And his girlfriend came over at like 1 a.m. And she came over for like, fun. And she brought her friend with her. And I was sitting there playing WoW. I was like, I had the entire night dedicated for WoW. I was going to play until the sun came up. And my friend's girlfriend went into my friend's room. And so she just left her friend. So her friend came into my room and she sat on my bed. And I'm like playing WoW and I'm annoyed because I don't really like her that much. And she's like very boring. And she said something and I said something snarky back to her. And her reply to me was, you wouldn't be saying that if I was naked.
What?
I swear to God. And I just go, bet I would. Because I was like, I just want to play my game. I don't even fucking like you. Like, if you strip naked, I'm probably going to keep playing my game. Like, that's my mindset. So I 100% passed up on sex to play World of Warcraft.
Oh my God.
Like, without a doubt. And that might seem crazy to you, but that's one of the least crazy things people have done because of dedication to World of Warcraft. So at my worst, I'd say I played close to 48 hours straight, but I never like skipped social events or like class because I just plan my free time around playing World of Warcraft. But that might sound nuts until I tell you about other people who played this game. So my friend Tim, he went into the Navy. And during their like time off, they would like go out and do stuff or they'd hang out at home. And his roommate and him had like staggered time off. So he got off and his roommate had already been off for like a week. He went into his house and there was a stack of pizza boxes, just like fucking 6 feet high. Cause that's all the dude had been ordering. He had also attached a tube to his dick.
Gross.
That ran all the way to the toilet. So he wouldn't have to get up and he was just peeing and letting the force of his pee push its way through the tube to the toilet, which had at that point fallen away from the toilet and was just spreading out over the bathroom floor. This was when my friend Tim was like, you need to figure your shit out. This is fucking disgusting. And this dude didn't really realize what was wrong. So that's starting to get problematic, but still not nearly as bad as how people got when they played this game. Like a couple in Korea who didn't have internet in their home went to a local cafe with free internet so they could play. They stayed for, quote, hours. And when they returned home, their child had passed away. There's no information on what caused the child to pass away. It just says neglect. They were charged because of the neglect. There's a lot of shitty journalism when it came to reporting on this stuff because it was like, World of Warcraft causes death of infant. Like, that's what the headlines were when this came out. But it's like, no. Neglectful parents who left their kid alone by themselves for hours upon hours is what caused this kid to die. That's one of them. A girl played in China during the national holiday. She wasn't eating or drinking or sleeping. The national holiday was a full week. By the 7th day, she wound up dying at her computer, still logged into the game.
Wow.
So her guild was like trying to reach her, like something's wrong. She logged out. They're like, she's never offline. Someone finally checked on her. They had a funeral for her in the game.
Oh my God.
That happened often enough in China. People were dying often enough from playing World of Warcraft in China that they literally put a limit to how long people could play online. It was 3 hours. It went into effect in 2005.
I know a lot of games, like they will tell you, hey, take a break. Like I remember
when Wii came out, like maybe you should go outside.
When I played Maple Story came out before the Wii existed. And when I played MapleStory, it would tell me like, hey, you've been playing for this many hours, you should take a break.
Yeah. That shit started because of WoW. Because those things did not exist pre World of Warcraft. They were just like, cool, go ahead, play for as long as you want. We don't care. No one ever imagined someone would play until they died. Even when people were playing for 3 hours a day, though, in China, there was still issues. Like, so to get good loot in a game like World of Warcraft, like all your equipment, like you have head, shoulder, knees, and toes, like all the pieces that you're going to equip, like your weapons, you have to go and run dungeons. And they range from needing 5 to 10 to 25 to 40 people. Sometimes I think there was 60 people rates. I'm not sure about that one. That's a long time ago. I can't really remember. Nowadays it's 5, 10, or 25. There were definitely 40s back in the day. So you have to work with a lot of people. The old loot system used to be you would type into your computer. If something dropped, everyone could go look at it. And it was an honor system, like no one pick it up. And whoever wanted it would roll space 100. And that would do a randomized dice roll of 1 to 100. Whoever got the highest roll was allowed to take it. So if people were scummy, they would just go and say like, oh, I want that. And they'd take it. And then they would get kicked out of the group, but they get to keep the item. There was no way to get it back from them. If you do that, you're called a ninja, which means you're an asshole. And usually people say so-and-so's a ninja, and then you get ostracized from playing with other people. One dude in Shanghai named Chu saw one of the best swords in the game drop one night when he was running with his friends, and the sword got ninja'd by his friend. So he was like, yo, dog, what the fuck? And his friend told him, I'm just selling this shit. Too bad, so sad. Like, I'm going to sell this on eBay for real money. And he did. He wound up selling it for around $600 in 2005, which is worth like $20,000 now.
That's insane.
Not really. That inflation's I'm just joking about that.
I'm just thinking of the episode of Big Bang Theory
where Sheldon gets it, sells it, and then Howard buys it immediately.
Like, I am the sword master.
Yeah. So that's literally what happened. So Chu decided he's going to call the cops, and he did. And he explained the situation. Like, he stole this thing. He wasn't allowed to take it. He's selling it for real world money. The cops just straight up said, like, there's nothing we can do. It's a virtual item. There's no laws around that shit. You're shit out of luck. So Chu sat down. He weighed his options. Then he drove to his friend's house and stabbed him with a real sword, killing him. He pleaded guilty. He was like, yep, totally fucking did that. Send me to jail. And he was like proud to go serve his sentence. Like, that's how serious World of Warcraft was to him. He took his friend's life.
That's insane.
This shit was so common during the peak of World of Warcraft playership, which was around 20 million people. I think in 2005, they were only up to 4 million, and they were already earning close to $1 billion of profit annually from World of Warcraft. So it's a huge machine that's bringing in all this money. But it was so common for people to get so obsessed with this game that it wound up becoming known as game addiction or gaming addiction, like colloquially amongst people who knew about it. I had an abnormal psychology class in college, and we used to be studying the DSM-4. It's the manual used to diagnose mental disorders. It stands for Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders. It is now on DSM-5. My professor used to talk about how excited he was for DSM-5 to come out so he could see everything that's changed and everything that's new and that's in there now. But he also laughed when someone brought up if he thought gaming addiction would make it into the DSM-5. He's like, no, it's not a real addiction. The DSM-5 is out now. Gaming addiction is 100% in there. And it is in no small part thanks to WoW, which drove people to do the craziest shit over a world that doesn't fucking exist. So now that you have an idea of how fucking crazy people were, and to a degree still are for World of Warcraft, let's get to the incident I'm actually talking about. Not the true crime and not the sad stories. Like, let's get to the bizarre thing that happened in World of Warcraft. I've wanted to cover a ghost in the machine topic before where something bizarre happens with like a piece of technology that was never intended. This is probably about as close as I have gotten before, and I never really thought about it until like I was like, oh yeah, I was there. So I mentioned previously that to get the best gear, you had to do these raids, these, 10, 25, 40 man, 60 mans, whatever. When World of Warcraft was originally released, which I think was like January 23rd, 2004, there were only 2 raids. One called Onyxia's Lair. Onyxia is a giant black dragon. The dragon colors have themes and WoW. It doesn't matter. You guys don't care. And one called Molten Core, which is basically like the center of the earth. One. That one has this giant fire boss.
Is that the one with like the lava pups and stuff?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
So November 23rd, 2004, when it released, players had to level up from level 1 all the way to 60, then go get some gear in like the 5-man dungeon so that you'd be strong enough where you wouldn't die when you got to the raids, the big raids, because everyone hits really hard in those. So it took until January 30th, 2005, so 2.5 months before anyone worldwide was able to defeat Onyxia in her lair.
Okay.
It took until April 25th, 2005 for Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, to get taken down in Molten Core. That's almost 6 months. So it takes a long time to quote unquote beat the game. But with MMOs, they keep releasing new raids. So everything you've earned drives you towards like this new objective because now you're strong enough to do it. It takes a long time. And some people obviously are super dedicated and they're trying to be world's first and be internet famous because they're the first people to take this boss down. And whoever succeeds, it's just one group out of millions of people. So it's like 40 or 60 people who manage to do it. So there's not a lot of people out there who get that gear to start. Once it's done, everyone tries to figure out how it was done, learn about it, repeat the strategy, emulate it, improve upon it, stuff like that. So, okay, let's fast forward a little bit. September 22nd, 2005. Blizzard releases a dungeon called Zul'Gurub, which is about like trolls. It's like this old troll kingdom, then all of a sudden like all these demons are showing up in, basically. Not exactly. If you're a fan of WoW, you're going to be like, Adam, that's not exactly what happened. I know the lore, no one cares, so I'm not going to bother anyone with it. Gets released in patch 1.7 called Rise of the Blood God. There's always storyline leading into these raids. It mostly relates to either taking over or murdering the whole world. Murdering, I'm pretty sure, was the point of this final boss. This is the first 20-man raid. You can't go any higher than that, and this one was meant specifically to let people beat a raid that wasn't super hard. I'm pretty sure Zul'Gurub got cleared the first day. And you could get really good gear in it too. And this was to lead towards the next iteration where people were like, okay, I got good gear from Zul'Gurub. It was easy to run. Let's go do the super hard one. At that time, there was this mage named Malum who had entered the King of Zul'Gurub in an attempt to slay the Blood God. That was me. I was doing this back in the day. I very much remember this raid. Here's the thing about Zul'Gurub. It really wasn't that hard. It wasn't. So, one thing I don't think people who have played WoW are aware of when it comes to playing, like in trying to fight big bosses, is you don't just sit there pressing a button. They make it very complicated. Like, if you're doing a basic boss, you have one person who's strong and can take a bunch of damage, run up and attack the boss to get his attention. Then you have a healer, heal that person. Then you have other people attack him, hoping to not get his attention because they'll die. That's basically how it works. If you have a complicated boss, which is how all the bosses at the end of these big raids are, there's a bunch of mechanics. Like, I did one 2 days ago where you run in, you have to free 5 prisoners, you fight this guy, 3 beams of light come down, you have to stand in them to increase your damage. But if you stand still for too long, you get a debuff, which is something that makes your character weaker in some way, that will decrease your damage. So you always have to be moving and yet standing in this light. But also he's going to do flash freeze, which means he freezes everyone a block of ice, so you're going to die. So you have to wait for an icicle to fall from the ground. Don't let it hit you. Once it hits the ground, it turns to snow. Stand on the snow, avoid flash freeze, and then do that all over again. And that's what these fucking raid fights are like. It's super fucking complicated. Hakkar.
Adam has just been so excited just to talk about World of Warcraft, guys.
It's so much fun. But, okay, so Hakkar is the final boss in Zul'Gurub, all right? It wasn't anything too mechanic heavy, which if you're used to these games and you're like, oh, I don't have to do that much, that means there's going to be something specifically hard about it. He's going to hit very hard, or he's going to require a lot of healing to be done. What happened with this fucking boss is that if you were standing within 5 feet of him, you would most likely be attacking with your dagger or your sword or whatever. You're not casting spells or shooting an arrow. You're not a ranged player. Any of the melee players, if they hit him, would get his blood on them. And you would get a debuff. That debuff is called Corrupted Blood. Okay?
Okay.
Corrupted Blood would deal damage to a player every 2 seconds. To be precise, 263 to 337. There's a range. At this level, most players are 4,000 to 5,000 HP, maybe less, maybe more. It would take on average 60 to 90 seconds for you to die from getting this. It does not go away until either you die or he dies. So it makes this raid very difficult because it cannot be dismissed. And the other thing about Corrupted Blood is that it spreads to anyone near you. You don't even have to touch them. You just have to be near them, and then they get corrupted blood.
Is there like a circle around you that shows you?
Nope. You have no idea someone has it until all of a sudden you have it. So the healers...
It just sounds... It's like, you don't know if they have it until you have it. It's like friggin' what? Like,
it's an STD, man.
I was going to say.
So here's the thing is like healers hated this because all of a sudden they'd be like, everyone is dying, but he's only hitting one person. It's because this debuff was doing it. That was the difficult nature of this fight. Not these ridiculous mechanics. It's like, can you keep up, basically? Once the fight is over, the debuff gets taken off your character. Whether or not you die or you defeat him, it comes off. But there was one thing the developers did not account for, and that is that there's a bunch of classes in this game. So like I was a mage, like I mentioned, which is spellcaster. I throw fireballs from like 30 feet away. There are warriors. They stand in front of the big boss and they get hit and they hold up their shield and hope to not die. There's also a class called hunters. Hunters were very popular back in the day. They shoot bows and arrows from far away, but you can tame pretty much any beasts in the game and make it your pet. And the more you're with your pet, the stronger it gets, and it can basically act as another player for you. It'll run up there and fight whatever you're fighting while you stand back and shoot it with your bow and arrow. So it's like an extra player that you can bring along. And people were very connected to their pets. It's a very like cute way of like having a Pokemon, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you bought any of the other Blizzard games, they would give you like the collector's editions.
Random
would give you
extra
pets
stuff, and pets were part of it. 100%. Most of them couldn't be used in battle. They were cosmetic, but like hunters could use their pets in battle. Hunters also have this ability. If your pet dies, you summon it. You just bring it back to you. You don't have to worry about it. Or if you're in the middle of a fight and you're like, oh, my pet might die, you can dismiss it. And that's where everything went wrong.
Oh, God.
So if you're doing this fight and your pet runs in there and bites him and gets his blood on you, your pet gets the debuff. Your pet has corrupted blood. If you dismiss him and your pet has not yet died, then it still has that debuff, even though technically it's not on the board anymore, basically. And then if you die, your pet resets. Okay? So that debuff comes off. But if you win, the pet is just sitting there with the debuff in stasis, basically.
Okay.
And then people will be like, fuck yeah, we won. Oh my God, let's go celebrate. Let's go show off our new gear. And where are you going to go to show off your new gear? Population centers, the place where all the players hang out.
Okay.
So they'd go there and be like, okay, cool. What else do I show off? My pet. And they'd pop that little dude out. And that little turd was fucking Typhoid Mary. At the end of every raid I've ever been in, people are like, can you give me a portal? Which means, can you cast a spell, which if I click on this like circle on the screen, will take me directly into the heart of all the giant cities. That's exactly what happened when this raid came out. Anyone who was victorious, whose pet had this debuff that took them out of the raid and then opened them back up, started spreading corrupted blood to players who were not in this dungeon, and it fucking spread across the server like you would not believe. This is when several things were discovered in a matter of minutes. The first is that NPCs, non-playable characters, computer players, like that are there to just give you quests or sell you shit, they could also get corrupted blood.
Wow.
No one at Blizzard, even the programmers, knew that could happen because this is something that was never supposed to leave the raid zone where you're fighting. If you left it, it was supposed to disappear. So they didn't know that could happen. The other thing is that corrupted blood, the debuff could spread through a major city in literally minutes, infecting thousands upon thousands of players. And if you're not level 60, this thing will kill you in seconds. Just by being in proximity to each other or NPCs, you will catch it. Wherever they went, they were guaranteed to have it spread, and they would die very quickly. So not just infecting the cities, but then nearby cities. If you die in World of Warcraft, your gear takes a durability hit. Let's say you have 50 points of durability, a death takes away 5 to 10. That costs gold in the game to fix. So people are losing in-game money because of this. At first, it's an inconvenience. People are like, why the fuck am I dying? If you die, you become a ghost. You run back to your body. As long as you're within 30 feet of it, you click resurrect. You come back with half health, half mana. But because you're 30 feet away from your body and people are still alive in the city, you immediately get it again. And you start the cycle all over, this time with half health, hoping that you won't die. You can try and heal yourself through various spells and stuff like that, but realistically, it's just going to keep happening. So first it's an inconvenience, then people are getting nervous, and then everyone on the servers are just fucking dying. Like there's a chat channel. If you want to talk to people, you type /1 and you can talk to people that are just on the same server as you. And people are like, something's happening and the cities are dying off. And everyone's like, what the fuck is going on? Some players are like, this is a really cool event. Blizzard thought of something really good. Meanwhile, employees at Blizzard were in full-blown fucking panic mode. I know because I've spoken to the head of customer service at that time, who is my current boss, about the shit show that was the corrupted blood incident. Their phones are ringing off the hook. People are being called into the office. Players would resurrect and just contract the disease again and die. Cities look like fucking graveyards with literally thousands upon thousands of bones laying everywhere. Like when you die, your character lays there. It looks like your character, but when you click resurrect, it just leaves a skeleton behind to let other folks know someone died here. So there's just skeletons fucking everywhere. The cities were just decimated. You couldn't even see the color of the ground because it's just bone white because that's how many players had died. Players that didn't want their gear to break, they just fled to the least populated spots of the world. Like literally like 30 to 45 minute rides on their fucking mounts just to get to the middle of nowhere so they wouldn't die.
Wow.
So these players are literally not playing anything of the game. None of the raids, none of the content, and they're just hiding their characters to avoid from dying at this point. And then came the true typhoid Marys, the people who realized that if they kept healing themselves through a variety of manners like spells and chugging potions, they might be able to make it to the remote parts of the map with the sole purpose of spreading corrupted blood to the survivors.
What the what?
To just troll other people. The actual programmed game that people have been playing that was $1 billion industry that had people killing each other or killing themselves had ground to a fucking halt because of a programming error and a ghost in the machine that spread through every single server that existed, affecting literally millions of people, and they didn't know what the fuck to do. Cities literally fell. The game stopped. Blizzard did the only thing they could. They shut down every single server. They turned off World of Warcraft. And they reprogrammed Corrupted Blood so that it had a timer so that it would naturally turn off, and they limited it to Zul'Gurub. So anyone who still had it or managed to get it out of there in a new way, it would fall off of them quickly. It still had problems after they fixed it. People were still figuring out how to get it out of that dungeon and spread it to the world. The pandemic in World of Warcraft started on September 13th. It ended October 8th, almost a full fucking month. During that time, cities would just fucking disappear and people would be like, it's happening again. And they would freak the fuck out. I know. I was there. I remember the chaos. And it was, to be totally honest, fucking amazing. It was one of the most like unscripted gaming experiences that I've ever had. Once it was fixed, Blizzard realized that the popularity of the calamity was through the roof, and they designed an event around it. It was an undead invasion where randomly these zombies would show up that weren't in the game anywhere else, and if they hit you, you'd be infected. Within 2 minutes, you die and turn into a zombie. You had abilities as a zombie to attack someone else. It functioned exactly how the Zul'Gurub thing did, except that it was intended. That was the first day my friend Stefan's dad started playing, and he's like, is this normal? Why am I being chased by zombies? So my full level character flew out to this level 1 dude, and I was just running around protecting him, and the people trying to kill him were all other players. So it's like it inspired a later event that was intended, but the incident was so notable. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, reached out to Blizzard to study the pandemic because they thought it was a perfect model of what could happen in the real world. They hoped to collect any data they could to study how a disease that's transmissible by contact could spread through population centers. Blizzard didn't have the specific data the CDC was looking for, but through timelines and first-hand accounts, they were able to get an idea of what had happened, and multiple medical journals had reports of this compared to real-world scenarios and how it might play out. The model for what happened with the fast travel to the major cities was compared to what would happen if people who were symptomatic or asymptomatic decided to, travel by airplane. Studies were performed about the massive danger that would occur if asymptomatic carriers, people who have a disease but don't know they have it because they're not experiencing symptoms.
Like the pets. The threat that they would pose in spreading a disease to not just pandemic levels, because this is the real reason they studied it, but to irreversible levels, to end game levels, to the extinction of humanity levels, because if World of Warcraft didn't have people there to monitor it, that game would have died that day. If it was a game that they released and wasn't like a constant surveilled game, it was literally the end of the World of Warcraft. That was it. It was fucking over. Wow.
There's no programming team for the world in real life that can shut it down and code out the disease. So people realize, like, if this can happen so easily, what would happen if something similar happened in the real world? And then they did psychological studies to figure out why in the fuck folks would want to willingly spread the disease. Most of these studies came back with the caveat that true results are completely impossible to yield from these studies due to the fact that the quote-unquote experiment occurred in a virtual world. People almost certainly would not willingly expose other people to a potentially deadly disease out of boredom, spite, or malice, right?
Incorrect.
That would never happen. And asymptomatic carriers, if informed that they had the disease, wouldn't willingly travel to population centers and expose others, especially knowing that they would almost certainly infect someone who was not asymptomatic, right?
Incorrect.
So now it's 2023. It's been 18 years. We've all been through COVID-19, a disease with an R0 of around 3, meaning if you have it, you're almost certainly going to get 3 other people sick with it.
What?
And a mortality rate of around 1.0 in the United States, meaning for every 100 people that get it, 1 of them die. It's 0.1 in South Korea. Did not realize that. It's also 4.9% in Peru. So it definitely varies on where you're at and the accessibility of medicine and the, vaccine. Not just the vaccine, but the way people are preventing it from spreading.
Right.
So we all remember what 2020 was like. It's a fucking shit show. We all know how something can spread.
I learned how to make bread.
She learned how to make bread. Everyone I know at this point, every single person has had COVID, including me. I held out for almost 2.5 years and it finally got me. The corrupted blood incident of 2005 showed everyone in 2005 who played World of Warcraft, the CDC, and anyone who paid attention to the news, what would happen if what we all just went through had a 100% mortality rate. It would be the extinction of the human race. 100%. No one knows what's going to happen in the future, but if something were to show up that was new, that the experts couldn't identify the cause of, and couldn't find a way to stop, it would absolutely burn through this world like wildfire. The only thing they believe would stop a global pandemic from exterminating the human race is if the disease was so bad it killed its host before it spread. So just like in World of Warcraft, the only thing you can hope for is for all the infected to die out before they can get to the healthy people.
Wow.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
It was simulated in 2005 after 2020. It's becoming more likely that that's the only solution for a global pandemic because people are so not likely to prevent the spread of disease, even on a scale where they think it could wipe out humanity. That's horrifying. Now, I've been in one virtual pandemic and one real world pandemic, and I'm 37 years old. I got both of those notches on my belt. I kind of get the feeling like I might be being prepped for something on a more severe scale.
Wow.
But man, I hope not. Because if something like that did happen, I promise you I will be casting fireballs against anyone who comes near us in the real world.
I mean, I wish we had powers like that.
I do. It's called Molotov Cocktail. And I will cast it as often as possible. But it's just something that I realized, wow, that happened. It really parallels 2020. I wonder how people view it through the lens of COVID at this point. And it's like, if COVID was deadlier and it spreads as much as it could, it might have wiped us all out. And I was just like, holy fuck, I never thought of it like that.
The whole world shut down.
It did, man. It's crazy to think about that pandemic and the virtual pandemic and compare the two, where it's just like, if you put one of the statistics from one into the other one, like what variables would have changed? You know what I mean? Like, what if you could only spread the disease that's 100% mortality rate to 3 people? Everyone still would have died. You know?
Yeah.
So it's so bizarre to think back on it and look at it and be like, this was a perfect simulation that caught everyone's attention. And then 15 years later, we had COVID. And it was just like, there's so many more things no one could have accounted for. And they're all basically like, how do we handle people? How do we handle the people that try and get the disease so they can run it to people without the disease? And I don't know. It's just scary to me. And I thought you guys would find it interesting. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
It was entertaining. So. The pictures are entertaining.
Oh, yeah. You got to check out our Instagram so you can see the boss that started this. It'll have the statistics of what the debuff did and then just fucking bones across the entire world of Warcraft. So I hope you enjoyed this. I was taking a shot on this. I was like, I hope people enjoy this. So
thank you. You can obviously tell how much fun you had talking about World of Warcraft.
I hope so.
I really appreciate the time you took to tell us about it.
Cool. No problem. You're welcome. That is everything we have for episode 262. If you would like to send us a story about something that's happened to you that's supernatural, paranormal, coincidental, true crime, extraterrestrial, or coincidental in nature, feel free to do so by emailing storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com. Click on Contact Us, fill out that form. It comes directly to us. Or you can hit us up on social media. Facebook is facebook.com/scariyshpodcast. Twitter is @scariyshpod, and Instagram is @scariyshpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scariyshpodcast. Tiers start at $1. Those are monthly donations. And I have just mailed out this season's rewards. They're stickers by Doodle Burrito on Instagram. And they're absolutely adorable. I love them. So hopefully you guys start getting those soon if you're badge of honor tier and above. We also have a coffee, ko-fi.com/scariyshpodcast. And those are one-time donations. But anything you do to help us out, share us, tell somebody about us, make them listen to the podcast while you guys are driving in the car or something. Any of that helps. So thank you so much to everybody who has pimped us out.
Yeah, we appreciate you folks. You guys are all amazing. Seriously, thank you. That's everything we got for this particular episode, though. So, Robin, why don't you go ahead and sign us out?
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.